Now we're going to talk about who Yahweh is going to use, is going to send to attack and destroy the United States of America. We have already discussed in previous talks that the United States of America in the Bible is described in one prophetic way as Babylon, Babylon the great prostitute, the harlot, spoken of in the Old Testament and the New Testaments, in the books of Jeremiah, Isaiah, and Ezekiel, in Habakkuk, and in the New Testament in the book of Revelation. We have proven that the United States of America is Babylon and couldn't be any other country, any other nation. And it just makes sense, too, that in the end time, given the place that the United States has, the predominance that it has on the world scene, even though it's starting to lose a lot of that now, it would be incredible that Yahweh would not mention this nation in the Bible. And it's not just, that's not the reason that we believe that the United States is Babylon. It's because there's a lot of proof, and the description of Babylon, biblical Babylon, fits perfectly with the United States. It doesn't fit with the modern country of Iraq, and it doesn't, which was where ancient Babylon was, and it doesn't fit with the Catholic Church or any other country. Now, many of the descriptors used to describe Babylon, one or two of them might fit another place or country, but all of them fit with the United States. You need to go back and study all of them and prove that for yourself, or disprove it for yourself. I invite you to do that. Try to disprove it and to prove that it's some other entity like the United Nations or the Catholic Church or Japan or whatever. But when you really take a look at it, it fits with the United States. I'm sorry that the quality of some of the videos isn't perfect. The sound and the video isn't completely synced up. In other ones it's a little better, but the best technology isn't really necessary for this. It's just to go over these scriptures and to talk about it. So now let's talk about who Yahweh is going to send. Specifically, he mentions the countries. Now this is going to be really interesting. He mentions where the countries are from, he describes them, and then he actually names names. Okay, so let's get started. Let's go to the Old Testament first, Jeremiah 50 again. In Jeremiah 50 in verse 3 it says, "For out of the north a nation comes up against her." The her in context you'll see is Babylon, talking about Babylon, the United States. So where does this country come that's going to go against Babylon? It comes from the north. Where is the north? Who wrote this? Jeremiah wrote this. Where was he when he wrote this? Was he in the United States? No. He was in the Middle East. He was in Israel at the time, in Jerusalem. So north from Jerusalem, just go to Google Earth or get out a map and you can see what countries are north, in the northern area from Israel. There's actually quite a lot of countries that could be included there. But as we look at the scriptures, it's going to narrow down who these countries could be. But just go to a map and look who's to the north. I mean, the north is a big place, but it's definitely not from the south or from the east or from the west. It's from the north. Okay, so the nation comes up against her from the north, which shall make her land desolate, and no one shall dwell therein. No one shall be left dwelling or living in Babylon, in the United States. They will all be killed, wiped out. They shall move, they shall depart, both man and beast. Okay. For behold, I will raise, now this is, the I is Yahweh is speaking. Behold, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country. Okay, so again, the nations are from the north, but now it says that they're an assembly of nations, of great nations. So they're not tiny or small nations, they're great nations. Maybe they even have a lot of power. What makes a great nation? I mean, The United States is a great nation, but it can't be attacking itself. Okay, so we continue here. An assembly of great nations that come from the north country, and they shall array themselves against her, against Babylon. From there she shall be captured. Their arrows shall be like those of an expert warrior. None shall return in vain. So it uses the word arrows because at that time that was the word, the most sophisticated way of shooting at someone. There were no guns or gunpowder or bullets. There might have been gunpowder in China, I don't know. But up to that point, they used arrows, swords, knives, daggers. They might have poured hot oil and stuff. But their arrows will be like those of an expert warrior. So they're going to be a good shot. In verse 14, it says, "Put yourselves in array against Babylon all around, all you who bend the bow." That's like a bow as in bow and arrow. "Shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she has sinned against Yahweh." In verse 21, it says, "Go up against the land of Merathaim." We already established before that Merathaim is one of the code words to talk about Babylon. In all of these chapters, in especially Jeremiah 50 and Jeremiah 51, both of those chapters, it uses a lot of words, a lot of names, and they all refer back to Babylon. You can tell from the context that it's talking about Babylon, but it will say Babylon, it will say Chaldea, it will say Merathaim, Leb Kamai. We're going to see that in a little while. Leb Kamai, Merathaim, and I think Pekod, P-E-K-O-D, something like that. These are all, we're going to see that one coming up in a few seconds. They all refer back to Babylon. They're just like code words. There's also another one that's Shishak. And what is that? It's actually a thing that is inspired in the Bible a few times by Yahweh. And what it is it's just another, it's used in prophecies. It's just taking the letters in Hebrew and turning them around. And taking like, if the words, well, in this case the word starts with the letter B, Babylon. B is the second letter from the beginning of the alphabet, both in English and in Hebrew, coincidentally. Well, the second to the last letter, or the penultimate letter, is Shin. And so that has like an SH sound. And so what they did is they turned the word around, and instead of being B-A-B, they took that. They didn't actually turn the letter around, but they took the second to the last letter from the end of the alphabet and replaced it with the B. It's like a code. So instead of Babylon, it becomes Sheshak. And we say Babylon, but in Hebrew the real word for Babylon is Bavel or Babel. And so that's where you get those Sheshak. It's just a code. It's a code word for Babylon. Okay, so go up against the land of Merathaim, against it and against the inhabitants of Pekod. It's the same place, Babylon. Waste and utterly destroy them, says Yahweh, and do according to all that I have commanded you. Verse 22, a sound of battle is in the land, and of great destruction. Verse 23, how the hammer of the whole earth has been cut apart and broken, how Babylon has become a desolation among the nations. I have laid a snare for you. You have indeed been trapped, O Babylon, and you were not aware. You have been found and also caught, because you have contended against Yahweh. So we see this is going to be like a surprise attack, something that Babylon is not expecting. Kind of like the 9/11 attack. They weren't expecting that to happen either, and it happened. Okay, in verse 25, and Yahweh has opened his armory and has brought out the weapons of his indignation. Indignation means like hatred. For this is the work of Yahweh Elohim of hosts, in the land of the Chaldeans, in the land of Babylon, United States. 26, come against her from the farthest border, open her storehouses, cast her up as heaps of ruins, and destroy her utterly. Let nothing of her be left. I mean, this is going to be complete destruction. And we see that the enemy is coming from the farthest border, coming from very far away. All right, I'm going to have to continue this in the next part.